Good morning once more. As you've heard, Makori Danvas is my name, and it's good to be among friends. Chairman of NCIC, my fellow commissioners, CEO, distinguished ladies and gentlemen from the Fourth Estate, and my colleagues from NCC. Good morning once again. I, Martin, the session you've started was supposed to come to the plenary, but it's okay. You know, we are having dialogue. Dialogues happen sometimes not in a structured manner. And I can just respond to one thing because you've raised a number of issues. Mr. Gather has raised a number of issues, which my friend and brother, Mheshimiwa Abdulaziz Farah, in his session will facilitate a better response, because mine is a very simple task I have today. As I said, among friends, I see very familiar faces, people we work with, engage with, we talk to on the phone many times. We always make sure we answer. I do not think there is any phone call that will not responded to, or any invite that will not responded to. It's good to see a diverse group of experts and practitioners from the Editors Guild, and you are here because you're important. My task is to explain why, but before I do that, just 1 minute to respond to the burning issue about Martin issue of Tana River. Then the rest, I will give time and space for all those engagements to be happening, because we're all here. Chairman is here, and in his session he will give you why you are here. So mine is to explain why the framework, and then he will explain why you're here. So I don't preempt his role. Mine is just briefly. So just to give context before you even respond to that, this is almost, I think, the second engagement we had with Editors Guild. We had one before the previous election, and we met at Serena, if I'm not mistaken. And the reason, I'm going to give context to this just briefly. The reason we did that, we purpose as a commission to partner with you and all your houses that you represent, because we know the critical role you play, especially in our country. You are there for a very critical role. And sometimes, and I usually speak briefly, honestly, government can be, as Martin said, it is hard to deal with. It's information like Kuji, and sometimes it's intimidation, sometimes it's pressure, and we purpose not to go that way. We purpose to have a partnership and an engagement. And beyond the national Editors Guild that we met at Serena, we went to the regional hubs that you have and your editors, whether it's in Nakuru. We had numerous engagements with them, mashinani. This is not our ground. And especially on sensitive reporting. And actually, Martin has used the word ethnic cleansing in Tana River. There is nothing, we don't have that. It's very far from that. So we should quite sensitive in what we say and report. But that's what we're training editors to report and say. And it was very successful, extremely successful. During the election period, we were monitoring, because it's our work and our responsibility, 17 actually main and radio stations and TV stations, made the media houses in what is being reported. So the 24-hour monitoring. We had a monitoring center up at our office, and we had the software and the capability to know what is said when at what time. And I can tell you, after thousands of hours of your reporting, of whether it's your reporting through the air, TV, or print, or digital, can you imagine there was zero infraction, and I mean zero issues with what media houses did for a period of almost 2 years, year and a half of monitoring? Zero. So 17 media houses, both the big ones and the small ones, and the community radio stations, and the media ones, every one of them, whether it's the vernacular ones, all of them. I see my friend from Geto Radio Huko, everybody, and a friend from Kibra, everybody, we were doing that. And can you imagine, out of monitoring 17 main media houses in the country, thousands of hours of recordings, there was zero issues. So first of all, give your hands a big hand clap. Yeah, you did an excellent job. You did, honestly, you did. You actually did. It was very responsible. You did an outstanding job. And the CEO said you're professional and excellence. That was an excellent job. During elections, you guys did a fantastic job. And it shows it pays when you sit down and partner with key stakeholders rather than confront, intimidate. Because sometimes government does, I'm being very honest. Ni kweli. Mnasumbuana, mnapigiwa wazimu, sijui toa stories, no. We said let's sit down and talk and partner. And that's what we did. Now, I'm giving context because that's why we're here too, because we want to have a new engagement. We had election being a normal that time, and we did not have any normal during elections. And we want to give you a roadmap of what you want to do the next so few years. That's why you're here in the first place. Before I do that, in about 5 minutes, mine is going to take 5 minutes. On the issue of Tana River, which Martin, you've raised up, let me, and even Mr. Gaither has raised up, just 1 minute just to respond to that, while the rest will be responded later. As far as you're aware, there's what has been happening, and you report it because it's your responsibility. But as we're involved, we're in the ground. I was there last week. Today morning, actually, around 10 o'clock, we have summoned 5 of the leading politicians from Tana River at our office to have a serious engagement. So if in case you see me and Mheshimiwa Farah leave very quickly, is because we have to have an engagement with those politicians. As you know very well, the governor of Tana River and the member of parliament, I think were arrested this weekend and released yesterday in conditions that they show up today for the summons. There will be, how do I put it, a serious response as far as we're concerned as government, not just as all stakeholders. We're working together with our sister agencies across all platforms to make sure there's a semblance of order. The real conflict is seemingly an issue of border, the border conflict between Tana River and Kitui, but there's underlying tones and root causes that are driving that conflict. In the plenary sessions, I think we can discuss more on that. But I just want to say that we've been on it. I have been on the ground, had many engagements last week. The other week also, we arrested a politician from the Kitui side, and this mission is still ongoing. As to why there is no seemingly many things, people going to prison, that can be answered later as we go to that. So it's an active engagement we're doing right now as we speak. I know there's pressure, and it's the reality of our country. Sometimes we have flares up and conflicts, and so we step in as a commission to make sure communities abide in peace and live together cohesively. So you will get once we finish with the politicians, you will get our take on it. So I don't want to preempt what we will do with them, but you will be the first one to take on it and report on it. So as to why we have this translation dialogue, just allow me and I will pretty much stick to the script I have here, and for good reason. Majority of here, if not all of us, have come from a home today, or a house, I assume. I don't see anybody who looks like a homeless person here. And in your house, or in your home, for that matter, you have, for the most part, different generations. Okay, staying in your house at all times, and sometimes visiting. We launched this report that is in your table, and I will not even go to it because I want you to read it. Mine is just a why, so I will not even mention anything on the report. It is right there, on the framework rather. And when we launched, I had a soft launch right here in this place actually. We had a number of generations here. We had the Great Generation, we had the baby boomers, we had Generation X, we had the millennials, and we had Generation Z. 5 generations here as we did that. And that is your house for the most part. You have your kids. I'm a millennial and I have kids who are Gen Zs and alphas. So that's already 3 generations, and the grandparents visit, and it's 4 generations. Yeah. So and that's the reality. And in your house, zingine kuna kuwa na shida, especially for those who have Gen Zs in the house. You know what's happening. I have a number of them, and it is a microcosm of what has been happening in our country. So a few months ago, you know very well what happened in our country. We had major protests triggered, and keyword here was triggered by the finance bill that was being tabled in the House. That was the trigger. But we know the issues that we're facing. You reported extremely well, covered it very well. And I don't want to go to that. But this was the trigger that pushed the country to what we saw. Now, prior to that, NCAC was planning something called Peace in the Cities. We were trying to engage vulnerable youth in our informal settlements, beginning with Nairobi, so that because we saw the challenges we had in previous elections and how they're misused, and we know the rise of criminal gangs and rise of we know the challenges that vulnerable youth face in our country. In Nairobi, 60% of the population lives in informal settlement, and we've worked closely in Kibra, Mathare, and Kawangware, and that was the plan. And right before we launched that initiative called Peace to the Cities, bam, we had major protests hitting the country. And as a commission, we sat back and said, how do we engage what is happening now? How do we effectively respond? And the key word here is respond to the new reality that Gen Zs have brought to, the young people basically have brought to the fore. And we sat down, and a lot of things were happening at that time, and the protests were really picking. I was there on the ground. I was engaging those young people. And, of course, there's a state officer still doing the work that we're supposed to do. Things emerged, and you saw very well what emerged. And in the heat of the moment, and remember just carefully, remember the president wanting to engage the youth, and he said this, and this is why this is coming. He wanted to engage them. He promised on a Sunday service somewhere in Nyandarua that he will engage. And a multi-sector framework was designed, which we advised is not the best way. And I remember getting a call from, no, he's not here, I thought he would be here, from a good friend in a nation, and in what we will advise. The advice was given privately, and I say the president should actually engage Gen Zs in their platforms, in access and so on and forth. That was being resisted behind the scenes, but we said that is the only effective way. You have to engage. And he tried to engage, and he went into X, and you know what happened. But behind the scenes, he was really trying to reach out to this generation. And because your friends and journalists, I can tell you what was happening behind the scenes, trying just to facilitate some sense of order, because people saw what they saw, but there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. And we were having discussions with the highest office, the chairman met with the president himself on the very specific issue, and saying, why don't you facilitate an engagement with the young people? I can tell you, he said, because that's the time we were doing, he said, listen, I don't know how to do it. We've tried, and nobody's doing anything. And in his meeting, he said, why don't you, I'm willing to engage. I don't know who to engage, I don't know how to go about it. Okay? So I started having back channels with the youth leaders that not youth leaders, the main influencers that you see on X's and the media platforms, and back channeling through proxies, trying to convince them to have an engagement with the president. Because that's exactly, he was willing to sit down and engage. Genuinely, he was. So that's what he told us. And we tried to reach to them. Now, you know very well we do a lot of conflict engagement. And I can tell you this was the hardest thing we did, because they were intransigent, they refused to listen, they didn't want to engage. They said there's no dialogue. They hated the word dialogue, they hated it. And that's why even as a commissioner, we had to change to transgenerational conversations. Originally it was dialogue, and they said, no, we are not what? Kuna dialogue. Walikataa kabisa tuongei, there's no dialogue. Dialogue is a bad thing for Gen Zs. So what we were supposed to do? And I can tell you we did. I tried to talk to them, and we circled back to the president and said, this is what we've done and said, but they're unwilling. And you know what has happened? And we sat down as a commission and came up with this framework that you see, that is here. And there's, just to quickly here, just read this out because I need to finish this. You see, the generational gap or tensions that are present, the older generation has the experience, the wisdom, okay, the history, the custodians of the history that has happened. The young people are bursting with energy, and they sometimes seem impatient and they're entitled, and the old generation feel like the young people are very disrespectful to traditions. And the young people, the youth, Gen Z, see these people as completely out of touch. Like, guys, you don't understand. It's because it's in the era of social media, you're on X or you're on TikTok and all that stuff, and you guys don't understand. Well, which they can be right to an extent. And you're resistant to change because the babu common ideas and too, you don't want to change. And this kind of communication is what it is. And what we saw as a commission, it wasn't just how do I put it? It wasn't conflict between young people and the government. No. There was actually a disconnect between generations. There was actually, because all senior leadership in government, of course, belong to a different generation, and the young people agitating for change and calling for change in our country belong to a very different generation. And what they were saying and how they were saying it was very different from those who be in power and how they thought and how they were responding to. There was a clear gap, there was a disconnect between what these people were saying. And that is what actually facilitating the conflict, because nobody was not, they were talking at each other and not really talking to each other. There are three things that we saw and we want to address in this framework. When we don't, and these are the main things that came up, and in summary, they are in your main of them are in that. But one of the things that we became very clear was the lack of trust. There is basically negative trust between generations, between people. The young people don't just trust those who've been. Even within the young generations, between the Gen Z and the millennials, there was a conflict between them. If you saw social media, between Gen Zs and the parents, X's and boomers, they don't absolutely trust them. They were saying, musitusho, musituambie, si tunajua. What are you telling us? You cannot advise us. We know what we are doing. Tunaenda kwa streets leo. This is what we are fighting for. You guys have been quiet. You remember that phrase, we are not our parents? Mnakumbuka hiyo? We are not what? Our parents. We are not our parents. Amda tubeba ufala. And then they are quiet. Us guys, we will show you dust. Basically, that's what you're saying. Senior? Yeah? So that phrase tells you a lot. We are not our parents. We're not that generation. We're not. We will not sit down. We will not keep quiet. And you can see that. So there was a lot of trust. One of the reasons, so I gave you that story, the backstory, what was happening behind the scenes, is because the main challenge we are having was trust. They were telling me, Dan, but you see, right now you're telling us we go sit with the president, but right now we are being abducted, we are being arrested, we are being harassed. Most of them actually were in hiding. So I was communicating to them through proxies. There's bridges, so I talk to somebody, they say, go tell so-and-so, this is the question. Then they say, okay, circle back and tell the commissioner, this is our position, this or this. They couldn't even, me and my young person like you, said, no, we are a state officer, we don't trust you guys. Yeah? So we are not showing up, we are not buying that story. I said, no, this is coming from the highest office. I'm communicating on behalf of the president, willing to talk, except no, we don't trust. There was zero, absolute zero trust. And that was the biggest challenge just to overcome, to try to convince them, no, this is different, this is the reality. And which leads to the second thing, missed opportunities. You see, each generation has its unique strength, and that's the reality, and perspective. I usually say this, position determines perspective. Where you are determines what you see. Right now, because I'm standing here, I see what you cannot see. Yeah, it's just how it is. And so are two generations, the boomers, the X's, because of where they have been in life, they see things differently. And the young people, because of their age and because of technology, their tech savvy, they see things very differently too. So this strength sometimes become a problem, and we fail to communicate effectively instead of understanding that together we can do much more, and that's easily what was happening. And ladies and gentlemen, we can all agree the things they were agitating for were true and were essential for our country's accountability. That is why it's called the quest for political decency and accountability in Kenya. This culture of impunity that has continued for a long time, that is what they're saying, it has come to an end. And we're saying we're agreeing with them to an extent. There has to be accountability. And there was a missed opportunity because these generations did not talk and engage, and that is why we come out may reverse Bali, or even gotten worse than we were before. Yeah. And lastly, so lack of trust, missed opportunities, and lastly, social divisions. Um, I don't know how much time you spend on social media. Somebody asked, which is the CEO said, the incitements and hate speech has migrated to social media, which is true. We monitor it a lot and we know what's going on there. I don't understand. I don't know how many people have been there, but I can tell you for a fact, we spend a lot of time just monitoring because that's our job. If you see the conversations, boy, we have a problem. We have a serious problem as a country. You think this thing is over, it is still simmering, and it has even gone underground. So there's something called we call it the dark spaces. They moved from X's and TikTok, where you can easily monitor, to Telegram groups, Signal groups, which is very hard to monitor and penetrate. And what is being discussed there is, anyway, I'm record. Let me so that it is quite troubling, just to say the least. So, therefore, NCAC's traditional conversation framework is not about one generation dictating to another, and it's about creating space. We're creating space for genuine, open, and respectful dialogue, a space where we can do three things. This is what we want to do in this space. Three things. One, bridge the gap. We want to break down the walls of misunderstanding and listening to each other. Bridge the gap. We need to break down walls and seeing the world through each other's perspective. You as a parent, you need to see the world from your child's perspective. Do you know the way you came out from your house to here, Kempinski? For those parents here who have Gen Zs as your kids, his world is in the bedroom, but in that bedroom, he engages with the entire universe better than I do in the real world. Ataingia kwa phone yake, he knows what's happening in Tokyo, in France, in the US, who's doing what, and that the world is more real. Yeah. So you need to see the world from a perspective. Two, we need to tap in the power of diversity. As each generation brings something unique to the table. And that's why we're having this. We want to say, you have something different to offer, they have something to offer. Why don't we come together and do something great for our country? We want to last on that point, shape our future together by stopping to see each other as them versus us, starting together to work as Kenyans united by a common goal, and hold honest conversation about the challenges we face, the future we want to create, and how we can work together out there. NCSC's framework is a roadmap to making this happen. This is a roadmap. It's about fostering trust, promoting understanding, and finding common ground. It's about acknowledging our differences while celebrating the values that unite us. It's about recognizing that we are all in this together, young and old, rich and poor, from every tribe, every region. Yeah? And this framework provides a platform for these conversations to happen. It encourages us to move beyond stereotypes, assumptions, and engage with each other in a meaningful way. It recognizes that these conversations won't always be easy, but they are essential if you want to build a more just, equitable, and prosperous country and society. So why these conversations? Because it's time to stop talking at each other and start talking with each other. We want to bridge the gap. We want to bring the country together. So we don't see just our lens of viewing this country is not just on ethnic issues, it's generation issues. We want to have a cohesive country between the generations. That's what we hope to encourage. That's what we ought to have as NCSC. We see it not just in the old lens in terms of what we've done in the country. We see it where the country needs to go. We believe that if we provide this space, together as a country, we can move forward. When these generations are engaging, are talking to each other, contributing to the greater good of our country. For you, Machache, I want to thank you just for listening, and I hope I've given you just a brief synopsis as to why the dialogue, and the entire document is at your table so that you can peruse, you can read, and have this. You can give us a feedback. Mr. Kila, do you want me to invite the chairman? You want to invite the chairman? All right. So I've laid briefly why the roadmap, why the framework we have. the chairman will come and just tell us your role, why you invited here, and why we see your role in moving this framework, this engagement, these dialogues to the masses. I'm glad you have town hall discussions. That's a tactical approach we can